May 3, 2007, 10 p.m. Kate McCann steps into a darkened apartment on the Portuguese coast. The twins are asleep, but Madeleine's bed is cold, the window is open, and her 3-year-old daughter has vanished without a single sound. In that moment of pure panic, Kate doesn't say, "I can't find her." She doesn't say, "She must have wandered off." The words that leave her mouth are immediate, certain, and devastating. They took her. They have her. That choice of words became the first psychological knot in an investigation that would consume 2 continents for nearly 2 decades. You think you know this case. The press conferences, the posters, the headlines, but what most people never heard about was the Derelict factory raided in 2016. What forensic teams found buried beneath a rotting carcass on a cold concrete floor? 8,000 predatory files, chloroform, children's clothing, and a classified drive that German authorities immediately placed under a total media blackout. And then there is the moment that truly freezes the blood. A question, a man whispered to his prison cellmate, quiet, deliberate. Can they still pull a profile? If the bones have been in the ground for a long time, that wasn't curiosity. That was a confession hiding in plain sight. Tonight, we are reopening the most scrutinized cold case in modern European history. A 3-year-old girl with a rare mark in her right eye that made her unmistakably herself and unmistakably traceable. A prime suspect formally designated by German intelligence, sitting in a prison cell with a release date of September 2025, and a prosecution that is running out of time. The file on Madeleine Beth McCann is open. Let's go back to Praia da Luz.
Madeleine McCann would have reached her 20th birthday this month, yet a cloud of uncertainty still hangs over European intelligence agencies 16 years after she vanished into thin air. In every cold case, there is a psychological breaking point where the wall of silence finally begins to crumble. Eventually, the statistical probability of a lucky break has to swing back in our favor. Portuguese authorities are banking on a new lead, deploying canine units and dive teams to scour a reservoir 30 miles from where the 3-year-old was snatched back in May 2007. If you are the one currently holding Madeleine, I am appealing to whatever humanity you have left. Let her return to the family she was stolen from, to her mother, her father, and her siblings. Today, I'm going to lay out a sequence of events that will force you to dismantle everything you thought was true about this high-profile disappearance. This is the investigative profile of a 3-year-old girl whose trail went cold during a routine family trip to Portugal. But the intel that finally cracked the case wide open only surfaced in 2025. Consider this a formal warning. The evidence I'm about to present is visceral because the most disturbing facets of this investigation were classified for nearly 20 years. If you have the stomach for the unvarnished truth that reframes this entire tragedy, proceed with caution. Acknowledge this report by engaging with the feed and subscribing. State your current location for the record in the comments section below. I need to gauge the global reach of this ongoing investigation because the facts coming to light are monumental. The briefing I'm about to provide will fundamentally alter your perspective on the Madeleine McCann file. Visual identification. A small girl with blonde hair and blue-green eyes, sleeping in what should have been a secure environment. Her parents were dining just 50 meters away, maintaining a visual on the perimeter. But when the mother conducted a welfare check at 10 p.m., the bed was cold, the window was compromised, and the asset had been extracted without a single sound. This breach occurred on May 3rd, 2007, involving 3-year-old Madeleine Beth McCann at the Praia da Luz resort. Here is the anomaly. In May 2025, nearly 18 years later, German intelligence released a dossier confirming their dark certainty regarding her fate. Once you analyze these specifics, the reason for this long-term information blackout becomes hauntingly clear. Subject was born May 12, 2003, into a standard, middle-class British household. Her parents, Kate and Gerry McCann, were high-functioning medical professionals based in Leicester. Subject had unique identifiers, a distinct brown mark on her left calf, and a rare dark coloboma in the iris of her right eye. The family unit included 2-year-old twins, Sean and Emily, and from the outside, the operational profile of the family appeared completely stable and flawless. Late April 2007, the family arrives at the Ocean Club, a high-end resort located in the heart of Praia da Luz. They traveled with a cohort, later dubbed the Tapas 7, intending to conduct a low-profile family retreat. Nothing suggested that this vacation would devolve into one of the most complex missing persons cases in modern history. The night of May 3rd followed a standard operational routine. At 7 p.m., the subjects were secured for the night in apartment 5A on the ground level. Madeleine was positioned in her bed while the twins occupied travel cots nearby. The room was darkened, but the door was left partially open for monitoring. The entry point was left unlocked. The parents prioritized rapid access for surveillance over physical security during their meal. The dining facility was situated a mere 50 meters from the residence, and they established a 30-minute rotation for welfare checks, a protocol that had been successful on previous nights. What they failed to realize was that they were under active surveillance. Their movements were being mapped. At 9:05 p.m., Gerry conducted a sweep. He noted a minor discrepancy. The bedroom door was further ajar than intended, an anomaly he dismissed as a simple airflow issue. The targets appeared secure. He exited the premises, unaware that the window of opportunity to prevent the abduction was closing. 10 minutes later, an associate named Jane Tanner moved through the sector to check her own quarters. She reported seeing an unidentified male transporting a small child through the shadows. The child was barefoot and in sleepwear, but the witness failed to recognize the threat. She had likely seen the extraction in progress. At 9:30 p.m., another family friend, Matthew Oldfield, volunteered for the patrol as his own unit was in close proximity. He performed a visual scan but failed to verify Madeleine's presence. He saw the twins and assumed the situation was nominal. This failure to confirm visual contact may have been the fatal error. Then, at exactly 10 p.m., when the mother stepped back into that room, she found the door thrown wide. The scene was chillingly wrong. A vacant mattress, a window gaped open, and the blinds drawn up into a silent scream. 2 toddlers remained in a deep, oblivious slumber, but their eldest sibling had vanished into the night. In that moment of pure panic, she dropped a specific phrase, one that would haunt our detectives for the next decade. They took her. They have her. We struggled with the certainty in her voice. Why jump straight to abduction before even checking the rest of the property? It wasn't she's lost or I can't find her. It was definitive. That choice of words would become a central psychological knot in the investigation. Chaos erupted across the resort as staff and acquaintances tore through the shadows, scouring every shrub and alleyway in a desperate, unorganized hunt. Dispatch logged the emergency call at 10 to 10 p.m., yet the local authorities didn't set foot on the scene until 10:40 p.m. That 40-minute gap was a death sentence. In child snatchings, the statistics are brutal. The first few hours usually determine if a victim lives or dies. The real professional failure, however, was the scene itself. It wasn't sealed, there was no yellow tape to protect the integrity of the room. A parade of bystanders and searchers trampled through the apartment, likely obliterating any forensic footprints left by the predator. When the task force finally moved to secure video from the adjacent hotel's security network, the digital eyes that might have caught a face or a license plate had already been wiped clean. A chilling oversight surfaced in the hotel logs. A staff member had explicitly noted the family was dining 50 meters away, leaving their children vulnerable and unattended. This sensitive schedule was effectively public knowledge for the staff. Worse, one employee's phone contained the contact info for the man who would eventually top our person of interest list. Weigh in with your theories below. Looking at the forensics, do you believe a simple change in protocol could have stopped this abduction from ever happening? If you're following this investigation, ensure you're locked in for the next update. Those initial 72 hours were a mess of speculation. The local lead was operating on the fragile hope that the girl was still drawing breath. By mid-May, the spotlight fell on Robert Murat, an Anglo-Portuguese resident whose proximity to the scene made him the primary target. We tore through his residence, emptied his pool, and put his entire social circle under the microscope. The result was a total lack of physical evidence. He was eventually exonerated, walking away with a massive settlement for the character assassination he endured. That's when the narrative took a sharp, dark detour. Come August, reports surfaced that specialized canine units had picked up the scent of human blood inside the family's holiday apartment. By the time September rolled around, the investigation turned its sights on the very people who called in the report: the parents. The catalyst was a series of alerts from biological detection dogs triggered within the family's own rental vehicle. One cadaver dog and one blood scent specialist flagged multiple spots in the flat and the trunk of their silver Renault, a car leased 25 days after the girl vanished. The working theory for the local investigators was grim. A domestic accident had occurred, followed by a cold-blooded cover-up and a fabricated kidnapping plot. Swabs from that vehicle were rushed to a top-tier British lab for forensic profiling. Early readings suggested an 80% match to the victim, but the definitive report dropped those odds to under 50%. It was a forensic dead end. However, cell tower pings revealed the car had made several unexplained trips across the border into Spain. The odometer logged 11,227 kilometers of travel. Detectives began to pivot toward a more sinister internal scenario. They hypothesized a lethal dose of sleep aids, administered so the adults could enjoy their evening without interruption. In this dark timeline, a fatal error led to a panicked disposal of the remains and a meticulously staged crime scene. The pressure peaked when the mother sat through an interrogation and remained silent for 48 out of 49 critical questions. We needed to know why she abandoned the twins in the room to run for help, if she genuinely believed a predator was still inside. And we needed the psychological context behind her admission that they had let her down. Analyzing these files always leads me to the same psychological crossroad. Does pure trauma cloud judgment to the point of looking like guilt? Put yourself in that room. How would your instinct drive you? If you believe this investigation deserves more eyes, pass the dossier to your network. The lead on the ground, Inspector Gonzalo Amaral, remained unshakable in his conviction. He was so certain of their complicity that he penned a full account titled "The Truth of the Lie," cementing his theory for the public record. By 2008, the Portuguese trail had vanished. Officials cleared the family and shuttered the file, admitting they were officially out of answers. But the darkness wasn't finished with this mystery yet. In 2011, London launched Operation Grange, a massive hunt that drained £13 million of taxpayer funding. The Portuguese reversed course in 2013, cracking open the cold files to restart their search. Everything changed in 2017 when a seismic breakthrough redirected the entire scope of the hunt. An anonymous tipster calling himself Lars contacted Scotland Yard, providing a name that had previously escaped their radar. This source was Helga Bushing, a career criminal who had heard disturbing admissions from a German acquaintance back in Portugal. Under deep cover in August 2017, detectives met Bushing in Athens, sweeping their room for bugs before the interrogation began. What the witness revealed was enough to rattle the composure of even the most hardened investigators. Bushing recounted a drunken exchange from 2008 during a crowded festival in Orgiva, Spain. His associate, a German named Christian Brueckner, was losing his grip and started rambling about the missing girl. Bushing voiced his confusion as to how a small child could simply vanish. Brueckner's response was a clinical revelation that sent a physical shiver down his spine. Not one scream. It was a chilling realization. His associate held knowledge far beyond a casual observer's reach. Between 3 and 4 o'clock that morning, Brueckner fled the festival grounds, disappearing before the sun rose. Federal focus shifted toward the individual who would eventually anchor the Madeleine McCann investigation because of this specific intelligence. 47-year-old German Christian Brueckner, a man who was originally born with the name Christian Pfizer. Investigating his history, investigators realized they were tracking a predator who had completely lost his humanity. 1976, Würzburg. Adopted as an infant, his violent pathology had already taken hold by his teenage years. In 1994, at 17, he walked away with a suspended sentence after preying on a defenseless child. Escaping to Portugal, he haunted the Algarve between 1995 and 2007, precisely where Madeleine vanished. Tending bars was a facade. His true trade was the systematic violation of private rooms and resort apartments. Records from 2005 show he savagely assaulted a 72-year-old American in Praia, the same hunting ground where Madeleine later vanished. When Madeleine first vanished into the night, Brueckner was stationed near the ocean of living out of a white Volkswagen camper featuring distinctive yellow trim. His fleet included a 1993 Jaguar XJ-R6 with German tags, seen prowling the Praia da Luz area during 2006 and 7. The investigative trail now turns chilling. Geographic cell tower data places his device directly within the crime's perimeter at the exact moment she disappeared. At 7:32 p.m., he engaged in a call near Praia da Luz that didn't terminate until 8:02 p.m. That conversation ended precisely 60 minutes before the parents realized their daughter was gone. By the next morning, Brueckner had scrubbed the Jaguar's registration and vanished from Portugal, retreating back to Germany. For a man with nothing to hide, he was certainly in a hurry. Is this luck or the behavior of a predator? Analyze the timeline and share your perspective below. Your psychological insight is vital here. Over following years, Brueckner's criminal pattern only intensified. Back in 2017, the transfer from Portugal to German custody was finalized. He did 17 months for the sexual coercion of a minor. Fast forward to 2019. He was sentenced to 7 years for the 2005 sexual assault of that American tourist. Yet, the darkest revelations were still hidden from view. In 2016, investigators breached a Derelict factory Brueckner acquired back in 2008, precisely 1 year after Madeleine first went missing. The grim evidence uncovered there is exactly why the Bureau and German officials are certain Madeleine didn't survive that night. Inside those ruins, forensic units recovered over 8,000 predatory files from various digital storage devices, several of which were stashed beneath a canine's rotting carcass during the initial scene search. Inventory revealed 75 youth swimsuits, disguises, and toys, plus canisters of ether and chloroform used for the chemical incapacitation of potential victims. Along with 3 ghost guns, agents seized a classified drive containing data that German authorities have placed under a total and absolute media blackout. Intelligence suggests the drive holds proof regarding Madeleine's terminal fate. Digital transcripts also exposed the suspect's disturbing fixation on abducting a small, vulnerable, and lead investigator Hans Christian Wolters went on record, asserting they've secured hard proof linking their prime suspect to the murder of little Madeleine McCann. No remains have surfaced, no physical traces found, yet the evidentiary trail is cold, hard, and points toward a single, lethal conclusion. Herein lies the chilling contradiction. Despite the mountain of data, Brueckner remains untouched by a courtroom for the McCann disappearance. By January 2025, the prosecution admitted the grim reality filing formal charges currently remains a distant, unlikely prospect. The clock is bleeding out. Brueckner's release date is set for September 2025, leaving investigators with a vanishing window for discovery. The tension tightened further in 2024, when the legal walls seemed to crumble around the investigation. A German tribunal cleared Brueckner of 5 separate predatory charges, ruling the evidence simply wasn't enough to stick. Defense counsel maintains their client is a scapegoat, targeted solely for his proximity to the infamous McCann tragedy. Yet, the shadows deepened between 2024 and 25 as witnesses stepped forward with accounts of the suspect's own admissions. Beyond the disturbing accounts from Helga Busching, a new voice emerged from the darkness of a prison cell. While she recalled him saying she didn't scream, a Romanian inmate named Laurentiu Codin provided an even more harrowing testimony. Codin testified that in 2020, Brueckner spoke of a Portuguese abduction, claiming he'd snatched a child from a residence there. He described an unlatched window and a search for cash that turned into the opportunistic kidnapping of a human being. He noted the rapid arrival of canine units, but his follow-up question to his cellmate was what truly froze the blood. Can they still pull a profile if the bones have been buried in the earth for a long time? May 2025 marked 18 years of silence, prompting a renewed, desperate search by the German Federal Police. Tech crews deployed high-frequency ground-penetrating radar 15 feet deep, scouring every well and ravine near the suspect's former residence for hidden remains. That same year, a new piece of the puzzle surfaced from an unlikely source. Insurance records emerged, placing Brueckner at the exact festival where he allegedly let his guard down and confessed his sins. A mundane injury claim filed by the suspect himself provided the definitive timeline investigators had been hunting for. This paper trail served as a silent, undeniable witness, verifying the credibility of the earlier testimony against him. Look at the facts. Is this a smoking gun, or is the burden of proof still hovering just out of reach? This isn't just about a cold case. It's a psychological study on how the truth can be buried in plain sight. It exposes the cracks in our justice system and the wake of absolute devastation one individual can leave behind. 18 years of questions, and the McCanns are still trapped in a purgatory of not knowing their daughter's final moments. Despite the dark indicators, Kate and Gerry cling to a sliver of hope, a sentiment echoed in May 2025. On what would have been her 22nd birthday, they shared how the passage of time only seems to accelerate their grief. Even with the silence from the authorities, their resolve to find the truth remains as ironclad as the day she vanished. Justice is racing a dying clock, with Brueckner's prison gate set to swing open in September 2025. Failure to indict by that deadline means a potential killer walks free, perhaps escaping the reach of the law for good. It's a nightmare scenario that haunts the prosecution, proving how fragile the safety of our everyday lives truly is. It underscores the brutal importance of the initial golden hour and the agonizing marathon that is the pursuit of justice. A grim reminder that predators live among us, and the truth often requires decades of digging before it sees the light. As an investigator of these narratives, I can't help but dwell on the countless ghosts still waiting for their stories to be told. Think of the families left in a permanent state of trauma, haunted by the void where a loved one used to be. The McCann case is a societal warning, a stark lesson on the vigilance required to protect the most vulnerable among us. If this analysis resonated with you, I want to hear your thoughts in the section below. Based on the profile we've built, do you believe Brueckner is the man responsible for this disappearance? Is the truth still out there, or is it lost to time? Your perspective is a vital part of this investigation. I appreciate you staying through this dark journey into one of history's most baffling cold cases. Keep in mind, secrets can be buried deep, but the light of justice eventually finds a way through the cracks.